Hi there, Thor owners. Today in your 2020 Thor Outlaw, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Roadmaster's Reflex Steering Stabilizer. And this is what our steering stabilizer looks like when it's installed. It clamps onto your tie rod, and it also attaches to the suspension over here on the side, right out here where it attaches to the axle. And this provides a dampening as well as a spring resistance that ensures that your steering wheel stays in the center. So what this does for you is it helps to reduce all the effort that you have to put into keeping your motorhome going straight down the road. Because whenever you hit a heavy crosswind from a semi that flew by and it wants to push you to the side, you have to correct to compensate for that. And this stabilizer here is always trying to pull back to center to give you assistance in doing so. Same thing when you hit a pothole and your steering wheel wants to jerk to the left or to the right because of the pothole you hit. The absorber inside here, the shock absorber, is going to dampen some of those impacts so you won't feel it as much in the wheel, and that means there's going to be less that you have to correct for every time that you hit. And with the spring in place here, if it does push your wheel off to the left or to the right, you can see that if it were to go to this direction, it would compress the spring, and the spring wants to maintain in its normal resting position here, so it's going to then expand itself to return back here. Likewise, if it were to go off to the right, it stretches out our spring, and that spring wants to again return back to this position. So it really takes a lot of the effort of going straight down the highway, getting to your destination, does a lot of the work for you, and it really does just help make it feel like you have more control over your motorhome. So what this means in the end for you is that you're going to have more energy when you reach your destination because you weren't doing all the work yourself, keeping your motorhome going straight down the road. This might be the difference of you getting to your destination and going to sleep immediately without a stabilizer versus having that energy you need to maybe set up your campsite and get a few things ready so when you wake up fresh in the morning, you're ready to just enjoy your day. You don't have to do any of those tasks you would have to do to get your campsite or anything set up. Adding a steering stabilizer is a pretty quick and easy upgrade. You'll receive all the bracketry and hardware you need in the kit to get it installed, and really it can be done in a matter of minutes right in your driveway. We are on a lift here just so you can get better shots, but this could easily be done on the ground, and it's almost better if you do it that way. So why don't you follow along with me and we'll show you how to get it installed. Now before we put our parts on, we're going to go ahead and hit our test course so we can get a baseline of how our motorhome feels. We're going to start by going into the uneven bump section, which is going to simulate hitting a pothole. So we're going to go ahead and hit that now. And this motorhome does a fairly good job of absorbing that impact. We've got a little bit of sway here. You can kind of feel it going on, but it does recover fairly fast. This is one of the better motorhomes out there as far as the ones I've just baseline tested. It does have quite a bit of rock that you can feel going on, and you can kind of see the steering wheel here wants to move around when it hits those bumps. Some things to help combat the steering wheel wanting to move on you is a steering stabilizer. So I really suspect that's going to make some differences there. We do got quite a bit of bounce there, it feels like in the back as well, and some rear sumos will help absorb that. And we do got a little bit of sway here in the front, and we can help minimize that with some front sumos as well. And you could always put sway bars on as well to combat against sway, but if you're really trying to combat against bounce and stuff, then these sumos are usually a better option. We hit the even bumps course after that, which would simulate pulling into a driveway or a speed bump, and that's where we were talking about the bounce we had in the front and back. So I think we are going to be able to make some pretty good improvements there. That should help the ride quality as well as the items that are in the back that are kind of bouncing around. Should help soften those up to extend the life of your various china and other things that you've got back there. We're heading into our slalom section next, and this is where we're going to simulate an evasive maneuver. And this is usually where I see the biggest improvements once we've done with our suspension enhancements is in our slalom section here. And you want to have the confidence that if something were to run out in front of you, that you'd be able to get out of the way and keep control of your motorhome. So we're going into it now, and we do have some sway. It does feel fairly good. We've got a decent speed going here for such a large motorhome, but it does got some rock. We can hear a few things bouncing around there. It's nothing slamming open real loud, but we could hear some things moving. So we're going to go ahead and get it back in the shop now. We'll get our enhancements on, and then we'll hit our course once again and see our improvements. And I do expect to see some improvements in just about every aspect. This motorhome does drive good, but we can make it better. We'll begin our installation by first parking our motorhome on level ground with the steering wheel perfectly straight. We need it to be straight when we tighten down all of our hardware to ensure that it's directing our steering wheel in a straight path. We're going to be working on a lift at first, so you could do this at home if you wanted to. You could use your leveling jacks to lift it up to give you more room to work. And we can get most of the parts installed, but we're going to leave them loose because it does need to be all the way on the ground with the suspension loaded to get that final adjustment. So we're going to head underneath now. We'll begin our installation down here underneath on the driver's side. We're just behind the axle here. This is the U-bolt that attaches to our leaf spring. We want to remove the nuts from this U-bolt. We don't want to do the one on the front, just the back. We're going to use a 1 1/8 socket to remove the hardware. You'll want to save your hardware. We are going to be reusing it. We can now take our bracket, and you can see it's got this little gusset here that's going to face down, and the small hole here is going to face towards the rear and the inside of the vehicle. We're going to put the slotted hole towards the outside, and it's just going to slip right over that U-bolt just like that. And then we can take the hardware that we had just removed, and we're just going to reinstall it. When tightening down your hardware, you want to go back and forth to make sure you tighten it down evenly. We can now torque our hardware to the specifications outlined in our instructions. We can now take our center bracket, which slides over our drag link here. And we can see here where it's going to slide onto it. It cups around the bottom side, so we want it to angle on the bottom here. We'll then use the U-bolts that come in the kit to drop down over top. We can then take a flat washer, slide it into place, and then secure it with a nylon locking nut. We're going to do that for the other side of this U-bolt, and then we're going to slide a U-bolt on the other side in the open slots over there and secure it with the same hardware. We can now run these down a bit. We need to be able to slide this down the shaft and be able to rotate it to get the proper orientation, but we do want to kind of take out a lot of this slack. We want to go back and forth too because we want to try to get our U-bolts tightened down evenly. And that's really kind of what we're looking for, something like this where it's still movable, but it's a little bit more manageable. It's not flopping around too much. We can now come back to the large bracket that we had installed, and we're going to take the larger bolt that comes in our kit, and we're going to drop it down through the top. We can then grab our spring and one of the flat washers that came in your kit. We're going to slide a flat washer on first, and then our spring. So we just kind of line those up, push that through, and I like to just rest it kind of on the tie rod to help support the weight while I'm getting the hardware installed. So I'm going to grab another flat washer and a nylon locking nut, and we're just going to loosely install that on there for now. And then we can turn our focus to the other side of our stabilizer. We're going to take the same hardware, but this time we're going to be going up through the bottom of our other bracket. We can then place a flat washer onto the bolt. And see here why this needed to be able to slide down, because we needed to line up with our stabilizer here. We'll slide that through the stabilizer, put another flat washer on it, and then we can loosely secure it with a nut. We can then go back and tighten down these end bolts that we just inserted with a 19mm socket and wrench. So we're now back on the ground. We double checked our steering wheel to make sure that it was still straight. And then we're just going to lift up on our bracket here until it's parallel with the ground, and then we're going to finish tightening these U-bolts up. Now that we've got those tightened down, we can go back and torque all of our hardware to the specifications outlined in our instructions.
I think the VR are excellent at that heavy-duty application, as we mentioned.
Now that we've got everything tightened and torqued, we can go ahead and take our motorhome out and take it for a test drive. We want to verify that the steering wheel does track straight. If it seems to want to turn the wheel to the left or to the right, then your steering stabilizer here is likely not perfectly centered. It's an easy correction to do that. You just pull it back into your level ground again, loosen up these U-bolts here at the end. Double check to make sure that wheel is perfectly straight, kind of maybe move the bracket around a little bit to make sure you're getting any kind of binds out of it, and then just retighten those down because it was just offset a little bit to the left or the right, which causes a slight pull. So you just need to make sure you got it perfectly centered. We're gonna go drive it now, and if everything drives straight, our installation's complete. So now that we've got our enhancements installed, we're gonna hit our test course once again to see how they have made improvements. We're gonna hit that uneven bumps course first, simulating a pothole. And this motorhome already drove pretty good before, but right when we hit that first pothole, you can definitely notice a pretty big difference. We don't have quite as much sway, and in the steering wheel is where I noticed it the most. The impact here in the wheel when I hit that bump, before it had a pretty good jerk to it, it's quite a bit less here in the wheel. So when I'm going down the road, I feel like I'm not gonna have to compensate nearly as much now, thanks to our enhancements. We're coming into the even bump section now, and this is gonna simulate going over a speed bump or maybe pulling into a driveway. And before we had a little bit of bounce at the back when we would go over these. We still have a little bit of bounce back there, but it does seem like it has reduced it a little bit. And that can help, again, extend the life of our components and keep things from bouncing around as much in our motorhome when we're going down the road. We're gonna head into the slalom section next, and that's usually where I notice the biggest difference when enhancing these motorhomes, because they do tend to have quite a bit of sway if you have to go into an evasive maneuver. So we're gonna get up into this section here, and I was feeling pretty confident with this motorhome before, so we're gonna have a pretty decent amount of speed with us when we go into that. Some of the other motorhomes I'm kind of creeping going into it because I don't have the confidence. But the goal here is to give you the most confidence as possible so you're comfortable driving your motorhome. So this is actually a pretty good speed, and it feels pretty good. We do have some sway because we are actually at a pretty good speed here. This is pretty aggressive for a motorhome here, and it does have a little bit of sway, but it actually feels very good. This almost feels almost somewhat like driving a van in a way, not so much like a motorhome. And that completes our installation of Roadmaster's Reflex Steering Stabilizer on our 2020 Thor Outlaw.